Hi there, it's Paula with Dip into Art. I am super excited to guide you through painting one of the watercolor kit designs for my curated Let's Get Beachy set. Each kit is packed with 5 charming designs, 12 vibrant watercolor paint colors, and a trusty paintbrush for those little details, and a handy color mixing chart to help you achieve just the right shades. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into creating a beginner-friendly piece of beach-inspired art with you. I will be painting the blue crab. As you can see on my 5 beachy designs, I have a blue crab, and we will be painting this one. I'm going to show you a very simple light wash of watercolor over the sky. So we will keep it simple and we will get started. Also, I will be using all of the supplies that you will receive in this kit. Let's get you over to my desktop. Okay, here we go. So you will get these 12 color watercolor paints. They're very vibrant, which means they're very pigmented. And the paintbrush is included with this paint set. As you can see, this is brand new. I have not used it yet. I just took the packaging off. Your designs will look like this. So this is watercolor paper, and I've already printed the design outline onto each piece of watercolor paper. That way you can get started and get started right away on these designs. So I will show you again, it's going to be step by step, really simple watercolor wash over this design here. And our first step, we're going to really kind of do this in 5 steps. Our first step is, of course, getting our paintbrush out, having our supplies ready. So I've got a paper towel, a glass of clean water, my paints, and my design I will be painting. And what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and dip our paintbrush. Since it's new, you want to give it a good rinse and tap, tap, tap on your water jar. And we will select a color from this paint kit here. Now my design has a more turquoise blue and a dark blue on it. And then it's got some sand color, and I'll show you how to make that sand color using this kit here. You can use the lid as a mixing tray, and I'll show you that as we go. And set your supplies up comfortably. I want to make sure you can see everything, so maybe I'll put my napkin right here. Our napkin is to wipe our brush off, rinse it off, and wipe it off. Usually with watercolor, we start from light to dark. Our lightest colors first, and then we move into our dark color. And it looks like I've got something in my water, so I'm going to pull that out because I do not want it in my paint. So we'll work on the sand color. What I'm going to use is a bit of this yellow. So since these are new, I'm going to use quite a bit of water to get it activated. And I'll scoop some of this paint right here on the lid. I'll scoop enough so you can see. It's a very bright yellow. Now sand isn't really this bright of yellow, so we're going to tone it down a bit here in just a second. And you can make pink sand. Ooh, that might be pretty. A little pink sand. So I'm going to keep getting some color out till I get a nice puddle of it. And all I'm doing is swirling my brush in this little paint pan here, getting a nice bit of color. I'm going to try and get enough on here to where I can do most of the sand. So I'm going to be working around the crab first. Okay. That looks very vibrant on the camera. And this is a brownish color. I guess we could call this maybe a burnt sienna-ish color. And all I'm doing is scooping some of this on here, and I'm going to mix these two together to get a nice sandy tan color. So that was the yellow and the brown. And I'm going to keep mixing it until I like it. And a good thing that you can do, let's see if I have one. If you have a little scrap piece of watercolor paper, you can test your color. Let's see if you like that. I think I like that for my sand. So we'll use that. And what I'm going to do is wet some small sections with this little brush of sand. You can't really see the color yet. All I'm doing is getting the paper a bit wet. And then I'll drop in some of the sand color in the areas that I have wetted down. And we're going to start at the top left. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start at the top left. So as I move down, if I started over here or start going this way, I could get my arm in my paint, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so we're going to work around his claws a bit. It's okay if you get inside of the lines because it's not going to hurt anything. I'm going to take just some plain water, sort of tinted with my sand color already, and get a bit of this wet. As much as I can, you can leave some gaps. What that means is leave some of the paper dry. That way you have some white poking through. And it'll give it some contrast. And I'm going to pick up some more of my sand color and do the same thing. I'm going to drop in, just keep dropping color in. Can just be very loose, have fun. As long as the paper is wet, you can move the color around with your water. I'll just go around his face. Cute eyeballs. Like that. And what you can do as you go is you can just drop drops of that color as you go into the wet paint, and it'll spread out and give it some dimension in the sand. Okay. And we're going to go in between his claws up here and just wet this down with a bit of water. And drop some more of that sand color, just like this. Then I'm going to go on this side and bring this color down and just work my right way around. I'm going back and forth with the water, trying to leave some white gaps for like the glare of the sun on the sand. Sometimes makes it look a little bit white. And then we'll take, and since my color is already watered down, I don't need to add any more water to it. So I'm just going to drag my brush along the edge of his claw and tap it inside the wet paper, yes, on the wet paper. Just going to go right along the edge of the claw right here and get that filled in. And we're just going to do the same thing underneath here. Wet, wet, wet. And then we'll grab some more of this. It doesn't look like there's a lot left, does it? There actually is more than you think. You do not need a lot of paint with watercolor. And this set here is fairly pigmented. Okay. And then all the way down to the bottom, I'm going to leave the edge just a little bit rough. In other words, I'm not going to go down to the edge of the paper, but I am going along the edge of the crab's outline. And I may need to pick up a little bit more color. So a little bit more yellow. A little bit more brown. It's okay if you mix colors in your pans. This isn't going to hurt anything. And I'm going to actually go just a little bit darker as we get on this side of the crab where he's got his legs sticking out. It's a little bit in shadow, so we'll just add some more color underneath here. And just drop the paint in, just like so. Okay, and before this dries, if your paper does start to dry on you, and just wet it some more before you put the color in. In the warm summer months, things tend to dry fairly quick. Okay. And then we're going to go back here. And if you do get some color on a spot that you don't want, just wipe it off before it dries. Okay. And then we're going to go back here. And then I'm going to grab a little bit more yellow. And a bit more. And a bit more brown. More yellow than brown. But you can make your color, your sand, any color you want. I think pink sand would look really cool. Okay. There's the crab sand. Okay. I'm going to give my brush a good rinse. And I'm going to use another section of this for the blues. I'm going into this turquoise-ish blue. And again, when they're new, you want to sit there and swirl your brush around until you get some of that pigment picked up. Scoop it up with your brush. Brush bristles. So I'm going to do turquoise. Scooping up quite a bit of this because he's got a pretty big body to cover. I try and get as much paint color mixed as possible before I start painting. And you don't have to change your water. The water's cleaner than you think. If you wanted to, you could have 2 cups of water, which often I do in more and other paintings. I'll have a cup of water for the blues and a cup of water for the warm colors like the reds and oranges, and then the cool colors for the blues. So I think we'll start with this because I'm going to water this down quite a bit. So I just dip my brush in water. I'm going to let it drip because I want to get water into this thing without it drying. So we're going to just, I left a little bit of pigment on my brush so I could see where I've got water. And I'm not trying to cover the whole body with water. I'm leaving some gaps so that some shine will come through some of the white paper that will act as sort of a highlights. In acrylic paintings and things like that, we usually use white and add it back into our paintings. For watercolor, we typically leave out the paint on the paper. If that makes sense. I'm going to scrub out this little sand color right. Got a little drop right here, so I'm just going to wipe it off a little bit. Okay. Now, if you wanted to, you could go straight into your pan and have some more pigmented color, a thicker paint color, or thicker paint on your paintbrush. Or you can use the watered down stuff that you've already mixed. But I'm going to, I think for this one, I'm going to just go right into the pigment and drop that into the crab where I've got him wet. And the back side of the crab will be darker in the front, and we'll use a dark blue for that. I'm going to keep my paper wet, starting to dry up just a bit. So I'm just adding some more water to the paper. And so I'm just going to dot some thicker pigmented coloring here. Give the crab some texture. Watercolor. Another tip is watercolor dries lighter than when you put it on the paper. So if you think it's too dark, it probably isn't. Bring it up to the camera a little bit closer so you can see that. And I've got some paint over here, so I'm going to. All right. And then the next step is I'm going to add some of this dark blue while the paper is still wet. And you'll see what happens here. These colors will start to blend together. And this crab is much darker on the back side, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure this sand section is a little bit dry. You don't want to touch that with the blue. So be a little bit careful. So a small brush is good for that. And as the color spreads, you can help it along. And all I'm doing is using the dark paint that I put here and bringing it out into the rest of the crab. So I'm going to sort of go around in the shape of his body. So I'm using the paint that's already on there and spreading it out a bit. Okay. More. Mm-hmm. And you can leave some texture in there. Just sort of scribbling around. I'm going to make these little spots. Got a little bit too much white right there. I'm going to fill that in, and I'm just dotting in that paint. And that gives this crab some texture. Crabs always look a little bumpy to me. Okay, so we did that side. Let's make sure this is still pretty wet. I do want to lay this down while the crab is still wet, so we're going to go behind, do the darkest part. Okay, bring it up and spread that paint. Grab a little bit more water, rinse off some of that blue, and use the tip of your brush and just swish it along. And sort of go, as I dabble, I'm going to go in the direction of the crab shell shape, which is round right here. So I'm going to go around and give it some shape. Okay. A bit more speckles. Maybe a little darker under the eyes. And I don't mind the outlines showing on this particular painting because it makes it look like, if you've ever heard of line and wash, sort of gives it that line and wash feel. You can even go back in with some more of your turquoise. Okay. And I'm not sure if this light is hindering one of these lights. Maybe a little bit too bright. So that you can see, I'm going to zoom you in for a second so you can see what's going on. And we will click there. I'm going to zoom you back out. And we're going to do the same thing with the legs. Um, you'll see a section of the legs right here. This is a shadow section. This right underneath the legs and around here. So we're not going to paint that yet. We're going to go ahead in with our turquoise. As long as your painting is pretty dry, or your sand color, I'm sorry, your sand color is dry, you'll be okay to paint the legs, and mine is pretty dry. So I'm doing my turquoise, and this time I'm just going straight on the paper without wetting the legs, because I don't want to introduce the blue into my sand. You could, but it'll turn it green. So because I started on the right side, I'm going to flip my painting around in just a second so I don't stick my hand or my arm into this. So we're going to do the same thing that we did to the body. We'll paint the turquoise. I'm going to grab some of this, it's almost like ultramarine blue, maybe cerulean. And I am just going to go underneath these joints like this. Trying to keep it real loose. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush and dry it just a tad. Keep it semi-wet and bring some of that blue up into the turquoise blue. Sort of blend it together. Not too much, just a little bit of blending. Okay. And I'm going to turn my paper around so that I don't get my arm. And I'm going to work from going this way now. So let's grab my palette again so you can see. Grabbing the turquoise blue, putting it in here, like this. A big part of it. And I'll just go right in through the legs. I am trying to avoid the sand area on this part. A smaller brush is handy for that. And a little bit of bead of water right there. Like that. You can get some more of this dark blue, darker blue. And we'll put it right into the wet paint. So the lower sections are darker and the upper sections are lighter. And we're just going to keep it that simple. Okay. And then we'll pull some of this color into the part of the top portion just to let it blend a bit. Just like that. And if you feel like you have too much water or you want it to be a little bit lighter, dry your brush off, clean it off and dry it off. Make sure it's pretty clean, and lift out some of the color just like that. A dry brush is a thirsty brush. It'll soak up some of that water, some of that paint. Okay. Next leg, same step. Get right in there. Your turquoise. I'm doing leg by leg because I want to mix these colors wet on wet, the turquoise and the darker blue. The brush gets a little bit dry, dip some water in there, tap it off a little bit, and keep painting. If your pans are a little dry, add some water to your pans. That activates your paint. Okay, we're just going to go right along here. Let these colors sort of bleed together. Wipe off some of the paint. And I'm just tickling the line where the dark and light meet, and just sort of bringing some of that in, dabbling it in just a bit. I'm actually going to wipe some of this off. There you go. I think I'm going to add some spots of turquoise just right in there. Let's see if you can see that. And then for big claws, grab a whole lot of paint. You might just want to take some water, a lot of water, and start laying down the water. These front claws are going to be lighter than the back claws. We'll keep these lighter. Okay, go straight up in here. So hold your brush loosely. Let your eyes go in the direction where you want to paint. And I might just go ahead and do this top claw with the dark color before I go into the next segments of this front claw, because like I said, it's pretty warm in here and kind of dry, so it's drying pretty quick. And I want these colors to blend a bit. And then we'll do just a little bit of blending here. And sort of around the edges of the claws are going to be a bit darker. And if you feel like you have too much paint, again, you can rinse, dry, and lift. Rinse, dry, and lift. This gives you some nice highlights. Maybe we'll go around this way. When it's dry, I'm going to lift some right here. Okay. I'll bring this up a little bit closer there, so you can see. And I'll work on this segment here. And I will do our turquoise. And I did wet my paper first this time, so if you do that, you can just go right straight back into your pigment and just drop the color down in there. I'm scrubbing a bit hard on that. I'll go ahead and do this guy too. This last segment on here. And while it's still wet, grab our dark blue and drag it into the wet paint. Just like that. I'll go ahead and we'll let these colors mix a bit. Let them do their mixing thing. Kind of help it along a little bit. Get some dabbles in there. Gives them some texture. Again, if you want another highlight, maybe there's one right here. Rinse, dry, and wet. Okay. I'm going to do this guy down here. And by all means, if you have other paintbrushes or bigger paintbrushes, you can use those. Lays down water and color a little bit faster. With smaller brushes, just remember to continue dipping in water and paint, as they don't hold as much paint as a large brush. It is pretty obvious most of the time. Most people know that, I think. Maybe not. And again, I'm going to do this bigger section with the dark blue. And going around. And then rinse off just a bit, and we will use the color that we already have on our paper to blend or bring some of that dark blue into the turquoise. And then I'm going to just dapple around a little bit and maybe highlight in some of his claw areas. Okay. Do these two sections. All over with the turquoise. Got a lot of water on there this time. And then the dark blue while it's still wet. If you get a little blue in your sand, that's okay. You just got some, I just wiped it off. I'm going to darken this up just a bit. Around here. And then we will use the color. I want a little bit more turquoise in the sky. Just a touch more blue. Want a bit of that contrast there. Gonna dabble some blue onto here while it's still wet. That wasn't really wet. That's okay. And then we can't forget the little lake in the back. Go ahead and go over this. With some turquoise. And then some dark blue. And I'll dabble in some of the mixture. Just like that. Perfect. And then while this is drying, we'll paint his eyeballs. And we'll just use maybe just a little bit of black. And make sure you have a good tip. If your tip flares out, just sort of squeeze it together. And let's see if I can do this without put my hand in wet paint on that light. And so we're just going to go around the eyeballs. Leave a little white space for the sign of his eye. Okay. There we go. And since these legs are dry, I'll show you what I'm going to do with the shadow. So let's see. We've got some purple. So we'll do maybe a purpley brown gray shadow. So really to get like a grayish, even black color, you mix the opposite colors. So purple, opposite of purple are, your orange and your yellows. So since we used maybe yellow and brown in the painting, we'll grab some yellow. And we'll use this color, which will complement the colors that are already going on in the painting. And we'll just do just a light shadow. And we'll do that just around, see if I like that color first. I should have tested it. That'll be good. So I left these sections white because that is going to be the shadow of the crab. Okay. Just going to do a really light shadow going down. Okay. We're going to do the same thing on all of his legs. And again, that shadow color, I used the purple and the yellow. Because the yellow is opposite of purple, so it's going to make a brownish. Could even make gray or black. I'm going to add just a little bit darker of a highlight, or darker of a shadow back here on his leg. And if your water is pooling up and you're worried about it, I'm going to say again, you can dry your brush off, clean it off, dry it off, and lift out some of that water. If you have too much water on your brush, just tap it on your towel. And his shadows or the shadowy colors will get lighter as we get forward. Because we're going to say the light is hitting right here. Okay. And keep doing that. I'm going to mix some more of that shadow. Oops, I'm running out. Too much. Just a little bit darker on this one. And I'm just lightly dragging my brush along the edges here. I know it's summertime and I feel like I have a cold, but it's just allergies. I get the summer, wintry, I even get some winter sniffles. We'll keep that shadow a bit lighter. We'll just keep going around and around and around. Well, let's see if I can use it all. See how little paint that I have on here? But it's still there, still color. All right, and that is your watercolor wash. We call light wash of watercolor on this blue crab. And if you wanted to, you could go back over this whole thing again, and you could add um, a deeper colors over the top of this after it dried, some deeper shadows if you wanted to. Um, but for now, this is basically how you do it. And this is again, these are the cute sets that you get with your paint kit, and they're fun for beginners. These are fun designs for beginners, and super simple to use. And I would experiment with different colors on your designs. Um, and again, what you'll want to do after you're done is uh, paint, paint. What am I trying to say? After you're done, take a look at your picture, and any sections that you aren't happy with, you can paint over them. After it dries, you could add a seashell. You can add any details that you want. Um, you do want to clean your paintbrushes with just water. For watercolor, just water. Rinse, rinse, rinse. Tap off some of the water and let it dry flat. You can even put it back in here and let it dry. If you want to clean this lid off, you could just take and wipe it down just like that. If the color doesn't come off, get a little bit of water and wipe it down. I rarely clean my palettes, but for this little kit, you might want to keep it a little bit clean. And if your yellow gets a little dirty because you mix colors with it, just take a little bit of water and wipe it off. Just wipe it off. Not too hard because you want to save some of that color. And those are just some quick tips on maintaining your palettes and your paintbrushes. And that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you give it a try. And we will talk to you again soon. Thanks all. Bye bye.